Godzilla, the biggest movie star to ever appear on the silver screen. One of the most well-known characters and cultural icons in modern pop culture. The longest-running continuous film franchise in history, spanning the last 65 years and 34 feature-length films. And at the time of this video, the franchise is about to release its 35th film. The long-anticipated sequel to Legendary Pictures' Godzilla from 2014, Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019 promises to be a major hit by reintroducing audiences to some of Godzilla's biggest co-stars. The marketing for this film sets itself apart from the rest of the franchise, showing audiences that rather than a simple modern-day remake of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster 1964, King of the Monsters will be a more thought-provoking take on the kaiju Eiga, exploring deeper meanings and stories than previously seen. Some audiences might find this to be a pretentious tone to take with the series, only associating the Godzilla franchise with outdated effects, bad dubbing, and cheesy monster fights. But long-running fans of the franchise will agree that the Godzilla series has always had a layer of depth and intelligence that the superficial viewer, or critic, would not immediately see. And it is because of our love for the franchise and breathless anticipation for the release of this new film that kaiju tubers all across YouTube are coming together in a massive celebration to commemorate this depth and the emotional reaction the series is capable of bringing. I am the Linkzilla. Join me as I rediscover one of these poignant moments from the franchise, a scene that perfectly cements what I believe is the hidden purpose of Godzilla's existence, and ultimately defines the entire history of the character. One monstrous moment. The moment in question comes from 1991's Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, a tragically underrated and highly derided entry in the franchise for its use of non-consistent time travel. Near the end of the film, when Godzilla is rampaging across Shinjuku, the film reveals that the character of Mr. Yasuaki Shindo, portrayed by Yoshiro Tsuchiya, has elected to stay behind in his corporate headquarters in the direct path of Godzilla's rampage. To me, this moment quintessentially cements Godzilla's true purpose as a character and an icon by fully addressing the often unaddressed facet of his being, the reason for why he exists. I chose this moment to hopefully shed some light on Shindo's mindset and hopefully clear up the misconceptions. Shindo has a long history with Godzilla, as this film shows. This movie finally presents an origin story for Godzilla, revealing that he began life as a throwback dinosaur, living in isolation on Lagos Island, undisturbed until World War II.
It was February 1944. The Lowat and Kwajalein garrisons were all under heavy attack from the American Navy, but our garrisons on the small island of Lagos survived.
During this time, Shindo was the commander of the garrison stationed on Lagos. Due to the fighting, the dinosaur was disturbed from its habitat and chased the Allied forces into a retreat, resulting in great personal injury. The dinosaur had inadvertently saved their lives. The film implies that this was most likely unintentional on the dinosaur's part, but the truth is still up to interpretation. Still, the film makes no secret that the Lagos garrison feels a cultural honor debt to the dinosaur that saved them. However, the animal's wounds are so extensive that there is nothing that the soldiers can do to help the dinosaur. In a sense, they have no way to repay this honor debt.
We deeply regret that we must leave our savior behind. Please forgive us. There's nothing that we can do. We can't carry you. We cannot take you to safety. We, the Lagos garrison of the Japanese army, will never forget how you saved our lives.
In their eyes, the dinosaur sacrificed its own safety to protect them, and now it's going to die, and this disgrace would die with him, only to be carried in their hearts. I see what they go through as being akin to a kind of survivor's guilt. It's the phenomenon where someone who manages to escape from a traumatic situation with their life will either often feel guilty about how they are the ones that stayed alive while others tragically lost their lives, Or they will feel guilt about what they perceive that they failed to do. They will feel guilty about either not saving others who lost their lives or not doing more to save them. I believe that that's what Shindo and his men were going through. The dinosaur saved their lives at the cost of its own, and they have no way to thank it or repay it. They literally can do nothing to help it, and now they expect that it's going to die here. I'm certain that over the course of the next few decades, Shindo would often have thoughts about things that he might have been able to do, things that he could have done, and things that he regretted not doing for the dinosaur that saved his life. But unfortunately, at the time, they were helpless. There was nothing that they could do for him, and all they could do was march home with a quiet prayer that he would have a calm and peaceful death, and that he would not begrudge them in the afterlife. That he would be at peace. After the war ends, Shindo and the other veterans of World War II would go on to repair the country in fundamental ways, completely revitalizing the economy.
So then, it was a dinosaur that saved our men. And these are the very same men that rebuilt our economy.
Shindo himself would go on to become a successful and wealthy businessman that brought economic prosperity to Japan. It shows just how much had to change after World War II in order to make Japan into what it is at the time of this movie and what it is today. But what does this have to do with Godzilla's purpose? Well, it's no secret that Godzilla's creation was a response to the nuclear devastation and fallout brought on by the nuclear bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Since his inception in 1954, Godzilla has served as a complex metaphor for nuclear destruction. But if I could state in my not-so-humble opinion, to say that this is the entirety of Godzilla's function as a character would only be partly true. I would venture to say that it is only 1/3 of Godzilla's function as a cultural icon for Japan. This is often an oversimplification of Godzilla's purpose as a character without seeing the full picture. The second aspect was often forgotten during the original series until the franchise was rebooted in 1984 with Return of Godzilla focusing more on Godzilla as an animal, a living force of nature that punishes mankind for outstepping its natural boundaries. In a sense, Godzilla is meant to be a cautionary tale about abusing science and nature. But there is a third, oft unaddressed facet of Godzilla's purpose that shows a window into the cultural significance the character had for Japan for the past 65 years. A cautionary tale against war or improper war conduct. I intend to explore this topic in greater depth for another video because it's kind of lengthy to explain, but the gist of it is that there are those who believe, myself included, that one facet of Godzilla's purpose is to serve as a form of divine retribution against Japan for the misdeeds conducted during World War II. An unkillable, almost godlike beast that rises up from the sea to torment Japan, a consequence of the disgraceful acts they committed during World War II, and a reminder to the entire country to never fall back into the old ways again. This theme isn't nearly as prominent as the other facets of Godzilla's purpose, but it was fully addressed as the central focus in 2001's Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, and it is my belief that this facet of Godzilla's purpose perfectly fits the relationship between Godzilla and Shindo in this movie. So all of that being said, let's finally return to Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah and re-examine the scene from the movie. Shindo had been enjoying his life, career, and success over the past 50 years since World War II ended. While he never discussed it outside of his garrison, he kept the memory of what happened on Lagos Island with the dinosaur alive in his heart due to his interest and love of paleontology and dinosaur-themed education attractions. That is until the events of this movie, where Shindo is approached by the main protagonist, Kenshiro Terasawa, a young science fiction writer, who presses him on the events on Lagos. Shindo's entire world is then shattered when Terasawa reveals his theory that the dinosaur survived, and 9 years after the war, it was irradiated by the H-bomb tests on the nearby Bikini Atoll.
So the dinosaur was hit by massive radioactivity. And after that, the dinosaur turned into Godzilla.
Suddenly, the last 40 years of Godzilla's existence, all the attacks on the mainland, and the climate of fear that Japan has been thrown into is all put into perspective by Shindo. Godzilla's attacks on Japan are no accident. From his perspective, in his mind, his inability to repay his honor debt to the dinosaur has doomed the country. He was hoping that his inaction to save the dinosaur would be forgiven and that the animal would die in peace. Instead, the dinosaur returns as a monster, larger and more powerful than ever, seeking vengeance. Shindo in all his time has helped lead the country into a prosperous nation, and now all that prosperity was being destroyed by Godzilla for revenge. The tragic irony that the dinosaur that once saved his life was now undoing all of his work. Even more than that, the film has a brief plot point where the humans try to recreate Godzilla using nuclear radiation, but Japan has no nuclear arsenal as part of its anti-militarization laws. Shindo reveals, however, that his company had, in secret, a private nuclear submarine with nuclear missiles at its disposal, kept out of Japanese waters in Southeast Asia, as a means of defense in case Japan was ever attacked. In a sense, Shindo's company had effectively broken the Japanese anti-nuke and anti-military policies by having these weapons, even if stored out of country or even for defense of Japan. In a way, Shindo inadvertently had fallen into the old ways, and for this, he is punished. Shindo staying behind in Shinjuku was never about trying to connect with Godzilla on friendly terms based on their past history. Shindo knew what this was. He knew it was going to happen. He wanted it this way. Shindo was finally attempting to repay his honor debt, his life repaid to the dinosaur who saved it. Shindo was offering himself to Godzilla in the hopes that with his death, Godzilla would finally be satiated, quell his rage, and he would return to the sea. I chose this scene because it is powerful and poignant, and speaks volumes about Godzilla's character and the unspoken purpose he serves as a cultural icon. It is one of the few moments in the entire franchise where we see from Godzilla's perspective. The editing reveals that when met face-to-face with Shindo, Godzilla does indeed recognize him. The two find each other as their younger selves that they were back 50 years ago in their minds. So rather than just being a wild animal, it shows that Godzilla is thinking. Perhaps Shindo's theory is correct, that Godzilla does remember and is hurt by being abandoned by Shindo and his men, left to die on the island. And for the first time ever, we actually see Godzilla cry in response to the memories flooding back to him. No words are spoken by Shindo. He knows he doesn't need them. He just calmly nods his head, as if to say, "It's all right. I understand what you have to do now." Godzilla really was trying to kill his own pain, but we all knew it wouldn't end there. Although it is interesting to note that throughout the rest of the Heisei era, Godzilla doesn't approach the Japanese mainland without some external force driving him there. Something to think about. This one scene says more about Godzilla's character, the history surrounding the creation of said character, and the overall purpose this character serves as a cultural icon for Japan over the last 65 years than any other movie in the entire franchise has done up until this point. And it is done with hardly any dialogue, just the pure emotions displayed between the man and the monster. And it is for those reasons and more that I chose this to be my one monstrous moment. Hope you all enjoyed this video and share what you think. But we also want to hear from you now. Share your own monstrous moments from the Godzilla franchise down below, or better yet, go make your own videos. Make your own monstrous moments. Explore which scenes from the franchise speak to you and which truly have merit to be focused on. Other than that, I hope you all have a great day, and let them hear you roar.